Dean Obeidallah. He wants to be your Muslim friend.
Most Muslims, I know many, are great people.
Watch this.
People.
You're listening to the Dean Obeidallah Show, where comedy meets politics and all things in between.
And welcome back, Dean Obeidallah Show. We're live right here, Wednesday, February 13th, in studio, and you can watch live on Facebook.com/Dean of Radio. Our friend Elie Mystal, he's the attorney. He's also the editor-in-chief of Above the Law. You see him all the time on MSNBC, where he gets increasingly angry as every segment goes on. And someone said the other day, I go, oh, Elie's on the show, and he goes, that guy's crazy. And he meant it in a good way.
Well, you know,
go ahead.
These are stressful times, and I am stressed out.
No, and that's fine. We should. So we're going to talk about the race issue that we were talking about because, and again, I raise this because I sincerely want to learn, but there was breaking legal news, and since you are here as a lawyer, and while I'm a lawyer too, you're here as a guest as a lawyer, tell us just a little bit about what happened with Manafort and Judge Robert Mueller.
Yeah, that boy's going upriver.
Right.
was what happened. So it looks like the breaking news is that Manafort, the judge agreed with the Mueller prosecutors that Manafort repeatedly lied to the FBI after agreeing to tell the FBI the truth, which, for those playing at home, is another crime. So the judge threw out, as far as I can tell, I'm reading CNN, which is always dangerous. Right. But as far as I can tell, the judge threw out Manafort's plea deal, which basically allows Mueller to go back and re-sentence him to kind of the maximum that he could face, which is the rest of his life.
Right, because he's 69 years old, so he's really close to, and according to the Washington Post, it just says it could add years to his prison sentence, and comes after a series of sealed court hearings.
The whole point of Manafort pleading was to put him in a situation where he could have a chance of being a free man before he dies. By violating this deal, it's now kind of very unlikely that he will be. Why he would do that is, you know, at some point, I think people do have to start to wonder, like, how terrifying is Konstantin Kilimnik, right?
Right,
like
the Russians. That's exactly it, right? Isn't it? Because he's not giving anything up on Trump, it seems, of any value. Because if he was, they would still make a deal with him. Right. So the dream that Manafort was going to deliver us up Trump is not going to happen.
Well, I don't know about that. And this kind of gets into a different point, but this gets into the whole, like, oh, the Senate Republicans said there was no collusion. Like, that's ridiculous. And there are two things on that and Manafort plays into the second thing. The first thing is the Republican Party has so completely debased itself. All it does is lie. Right. And yet every time they lie anew, the media treats it like they're freaking goldfish, right? They're all, oh, maybe this time they're telling the truth. Let's bring on Kellyanne Conway to see what what are you doing? All right? These people lie all the time. So the Senate Republicans saying, like, oh, no collusion. Like, why would anybody even report that as a possible fact? I have no idea. Number two, the reason why it's so obvious they're lying again is because when we're talking about conspiracy, when we're talking about this conspiracy charge, the Republicans have completely moved the goalpost to the point where, like, if Trump isn't literally hacking the emails himself, right, then there's no collusion. There is an entirely credible circumstantial case that Trump colluded that's already been made in the press. And people are like, oh, that's just circumstantial evidence. I saw Chuck Rosenberg on TV this morning say it, and it's the exact right analogy. It's the analogy that lawyers use all the time to talk about the strength of a circumstantial case. If you walk outside in the morning and there's snow on the ground, you have circumstantial evidence that it snowed while you were sleeping. All right, it's not a huge leap, right? At this, when you got Don Jr. talking to the Russians, it's a pretty good bet that he talked to his father about it, and that's where you bring back in Manafort. If you have all of these Manafort contacts with Russia, with the Ukraine, lying about those contacts now to the FBI with Russia and the Ukraine, it simply strains credulity to think that he wasn't doing that either at the behest of Trump or with the knowledge of Trump. So yes, Manafort doesn't seem to have, or at least Mueller has not produced evidence at this point that Manafort has the smoking gun. Donald Trump was in the room with Konstantin Kilimnik while Manafort was talking to him.
There's been so many lies and so much information we've only learned because of the Mueller investigation or someone leaking. We're not even sure how, but for example, The Trump Tower meeting in June 2016, we didn't know about it during the campaign. We learned about it a year later because somehow Trump Jr.'s emails were leaked to someone, to the New York Times. How it got to them, I have no idea. But somebody wanted us to know about this meeting, and we all learned about it. We did not know during the campaign that Donald Trump had signed a letter of intent with the Russians in October 2015. We just found out about it a few months ago. So even just like a month ago, literally, we found out a really big piece of information that he was lying on the campaign trail saying, I have no business deals. And Rudy Giuliani goes on TV and goes, well, he never signed the letter of intent. And then Chris Cuomo gets it and goes, he signed it. And then he goes, well, that doesn't mean anything. What else is out there we don't know? That's what's remarkable.
This is the problem with secret investigations. I mean, basically, we're trying to observe the art in the Louvre by never getting out of the elevator. Right, we're just getting these snippets when the elevator's doors open. We're not allowed to go into the museum, and that's what the Mueller investigation has been like. You get these like snippets, you get these like flashes of light, but you can't actually go and look at the art yourself. This is the same thing with the Senate Intelligence Committee investigation. So much of it was behind closed doors. That's why we need the Democrats in the House on the House Intel Committee to not only start an investigation, but to have that investigation public. So people can see for themselves the array of evidence that seems to exist against Donald Trump and make their own determination about whether or not the things that Trump is, circumstantially connected with, if that is enough to impeach him or not. Like, that's why we need it public.
And I've learned so much that's not covered much in our media from authors of books. One, Seth Abramson's book, Proof of Collusion, and I interviewed him twice, once here and once for Salon. And the email, when I first read the June, I think, 3rd, 2016 email to Donald Trump Jr. from Rob Goldstone saying, Armin and the other guy, Arias of the Argalovs, want to help your father, I had no idea who they were. But as Seth points out in his book, they had a long relationship. Donald Trump, this guy was a rich oligarch who helped Donald Trump produce his pageant. So they know he has connections to the Russians. Not some rant like, hey, Boris over here wants to get you. Just a guy I met says he can help the Russian prosecutor, can give you information on behalf of the Russian government. When I read that, knowing what Seth Abramson told me a few months ago and it's in his book, I'm like, oh my God. When Donald Trump Jr. got that email, he knew the Agalovs are connected to Putin. He knew they had great connections. And he knew when he saw the line, this is all part of Russia and its government help of your father, Donald Trump Jr.'s response is like, what are you talking about? This is insane. It was like, I love it. Literally, I love it.
Yep.
They knew the Russian government was trying to help Donald Trump. There's no doubt in my mind. I don't know if they delivered on their promises, but they definitely did a social media campaign. We've seen so much. I mean, Robert Mueller's done everything he can to put it in front of us. And our media has not connected the dots as well as they should, because partly it is a complex case. There's a lot of Russian names. You can go WikiLeaks one day and you can look at a timeline, you get confused and people zone out. A sex scandal is just so much easier for all of us. I think, honestly, there's no doubt the Trump campaign wanted to work with the Russians, and there's no doubt the Russian military, as the Mueller campaign indictment documents, helped Donald Trump by social media campaigns, Instagram, Facebook, even doing things on the ground. And the very day Donald Trump said, Russia, are you listening? The Russian hackers went after Hillary's emails. They thought they were working with Donald Trump. I have no doubt about that either.
And Donald Trump thought they were working for him too.
Yeah.
Like again, all the Republicans have done has been very effective at moving the goalposts, right? It's all about trying to set up the victory conditions such that, again, if Trump isn't personally hacking emails, if he isn't personally drinking with Julian Assange and being like, so what you got, boy?
Right.
Like if these kind of like Hollywood mustache twirly villainy isn't proven, then there's no collusion. And that's just not how a case works. But I think that they've successfully poisoned the waters for at least 37% of the country. We'll see if the other 60%, at what point they fully turn and demand that Trump be held accountable for his crimes.
That's going to be a good question. What I did see yesterday was a poll I talked about that it's heartening because they asked who would you believe a set of facts more from, Donald Trump or Robert Mueller, and now it's 55% Americans said Mueller and only 33% say Trump. So that's really the Trump base. Is the true Trump base that will go with him if he did shoot someone on Fifth Avenue is 33%.
Right.
Because if you're going to trust Trump over the word of a man who's given his life from serving in Vietnam to being in the FBI to as a U.S. attorney,
a Republican,
and you're gonna go with Trump over that person. It doesn't matter what is said or produced to you. You're always going to side with Trump.
Right.
So, all right. So I want to. Well, so that's good, and I appreciate that. So let's talk about an issue that came up, and I also want to get into the budget deal and Trump threatening to use money from other government entities, and even the potential of an emergency. And we don't have to go into great detail, but this sense. But first,
it's all illegal.
Right. Here's the thing. There's what got my attention, and I don't think I actually sent you this article. I had sent it to Danielle to talk about it to her. The headline was, "Why Kamala Harris is glad people are asking her if she's black enough." This is Politico, which is not a National Enquirer. This is like, and they go in there with their interview here in New York. It's called The Breakfast Club. I'm not sure if you know.
I saw some of it.
Okay, and in that it came up. The hosts are DJ Envy and Charlemagne the God, which they're the Meet the Press of that genre. These guys there, and the Woodward and Bernstein of The Breakfast Club, but they're just asking questions. They're not. I'm just trying to put it in perspective. I'm not against them. They're asking questions. They're not political people. They're saying, here are questions people have asked.
Right.
What do you think of this? Some people say that you're not black enough because your mom is Indian and your dad is Jamaican. When you hear that, and she's actually saying, I'm happy. She actually said, I'm happy you asked this. Barack Obama got the exact same thing. What's your reaction, though, just gut reaction to this kind of question?
I mean, I hate it, but I don't hate them for asking,
because
this is what's being asked of her on Twitter every day.
Oh, it is.
Like this is what's there. There is a segment of Black Twitter where this is a constant drumbeat every day. I don't like it. I sometimes dip my toe in and be like, we all should stop this. I don't like that this question is being asked of her. That's no offense to the people who asked the question. Who that's a legitimate journalistic question at this point, given where she is right now. But I don't like the question. I don't think it's a fair question. I speak from experience of a kid who, like, my entire upbringing, there were certain black people who would say that I was an Oreo, that I was trying to act white, that I was trying to be white. Like, I had to
really
fight with other black people over my blackness. For a lot of my childhood, that's my childhood is not, that experience is not particularly rare, I think, for a lot of African American kids. So I have almost like an acid flashback and post traumatic stress over the question to begin with. Just laying that out there. But yeah, I don't think it's a fair question. I think one of the reasons why she's getting asked the question is not only because her mother is Indian, but also because she married a white man.
Right. On Twitter, I saw some conservative black guy, Angelina Maxwell, was just like pounding the guy on that. And the question they asked her is they said, how do you respond to questions about, quote, the legitimacy of your blackness? So they almost put it academic, like these guys, DJ Charlemagne asks you, or DJ Envy asks you, your legitimacy of your blackness. You're like, whoa, this is interesting. Someone wrote that for you. Clearly, why are you asking this? And she said, look, I'm reading her quote, this is the same thing they did to Barack. Mm-hmm. This is not new to us, so I don't think that we know what they're trying to do. So she wasn't defensive. She explained it, and she went through it. I was speaking to one of the hosts here, Mark Thompson, who was saying this is not an issue at all, and actually got annoyed. He was annoyed with them for bringing it up. He was annoyed for me bringing up what they were bringing up, sort of like transference. I'm like, okay, Mark, I'm on your side. I'm just asking a question right here. So within the black community, and I talked to various people, this seems to be nothing. Am I missing something? Will anyone in the black community, other than those who might be who actually the small percentage that like Trump, so it doesn't matter what she says or does, is there anyone in the black community who might say, I'm not going to support a Kamala Harris or a person who I don't think is legitimately shared our experiences? Does that matter?
I mean, there will be some, right? I don't think there'll be a large bit of it. I don't think that'll be, certainly not anything like a third, nothing like that. But there'll be some. There are always some. There are always some who. I mean, I think it's a difficult thing to talk about, but I do think that trying to think about, I don't want to sound like Cory Booker, but trying to think about it in the most positive way, is that, because being black is so hard in this country, because the hurdles that we face and what we go through is so scarring, there is a bit of like a badge of honor, of a badge of like, I'm real black, I made it. And you want to, and like any frat, like you kind of want to protect that, So it's almost as if like, did Kamala get hazed enough in her blackness to really claim the experience? And I think, again, I think it's a terrible question and a terrible thing that we do to African Americans, and that we should stop doing it. But it is something that is done to every African American. I think the only reason why white people only notice it when it happens to Kamala or to Barack Obama or to somebody, or to Cory Booker, somebody running for president, somebody in the national spotlight. But this crap happens to black people across all walks of life, across all professions, in many ways, big and small. One of the and the tricks, the things that African Americans sometimes do to try to represent, try to prove to these people who should just be ignored, try to prove that they're black enough, can twist certain black people into knots, trying to prove their blackness. And I think one of the things that also came out of that interview was Kamala obviously misremembering when she smoked weed. She said
that was the thing.
Right, she smoked weed.
Godfrey was more upset. The comedian, my friend, who I showed this time, we were chatting before, and he goes, "She didn't smoke weed the way she said." He didn't care about this. He goes, "This is all BS." Because he goes, "Come on." I think one of the reasons why that screw up happens is that she's so kind of bending and twisting and trying to make herself black enough for the crazy, not the crazy, but the unrelenting people who call her on it, right? So she wants to say, "Oh yeah, I used to smoke the icky," and then she's trying to and you listen to the Snoop and whatever. Like, when that question would come to me, I was the kind of guy who's like, no, I wasn't smoking weed listening to any gangster rapper. I liked Pearl Jam. Fight me, that was you. Was that you though? I'm the Pearl. I liked Pearl Jam. So in the 1994, I was listening to Nirvana, not Tupac exactly, right? And so that makes people challenge has made in the past. So let me ask you, what is that? Because you touched on it a little bit. When you heard that when you were growing up, this is not turning into a therapy session,
right?
But obviously it touches a nerve. Why is it so upsetting? Because you obviously couldn't just go I don't really care what you're saying. You cared a little bit,
right?
So
I cared a lot when I was young.
So who would say this to you?
Other black
peers?
Kids. Other black kids.
Were you in school together?
Yeah, other black kids kind of trying to
bully me.
What do
you say in response?
Well, again, it depends on how old I was, right?
Oh.
At 8, 9, 10, I'm trying to... No, I'm just as black as you. I'm trying to... Whatever, right?
Right.
By 14, 15, 16, I'm a little bit more confident, and I'm a little bit more kind of well, I understand why you think that. I happen to disagree, but, whatever. And by 40, I'm no, let's fight.
So you're a Fight Club. That's it.
Don't you dare question my blackness. But that's something that I had to grow into, the confidence in my own blackness amongst other black people, against the kinds of black people who would question me on it, right? That didn't come naturally. What came naturally was being black and dying. That's what comes naturally.
Right.
The rest of this stuff, you have to it's a bit of an education and a bit of a learning curve for some people, not for all people. And I would again emphasize, most black people don't do this to other black people. Most of us don't do this to other black people.
So it's a subsect. It's not a normal. It's not a normal. Although for you weren't running for president, you were challenged with this.
It's normal, but it's not overwhelming. There's one kid, there's one guy, there's one girl who's trying to, look, if you're a kid, you're going to go after where a person seems weak. If you can get under somebody's skin, that's where you're going to go, right?
That's right.
And so it's one of the things that I had to learn of, when I show defensiveness over it, that just makes them attack more. It's we got him on this one, right? And so that just makes the kids kind of go in for it more. And so again, it's important to emphasize, this is not, most black people do not do this to other black people, but yeah, there's this is a part.
It's interesting, and I can't even think in the Italian side is not even an issue. The Arab side. It's not, because it's sort of we're an immigrant and one generation removed community. There are are you Arab enough? I mean, what I get is a disappointment that I don't speak Arabic fluently. I get that, from people how do you not speak Arabic? I'm different. So my dad's Palestinian, my mom's Italian, And while she was born here, her first language was Italian because her parents were from Italy, from Sicily, and his first language, of course, was Arabic. So their common language was English. If they both spoke Arabic or both spoke Italian, I would have learned, I'm sure, probably fluent in one of those two.
Look, one of the things I always say now, again, with the confidence of being an old man, like, look, you are what the cops think you are when they pull you over.
Right.
Okay? If Kamala Harris gets pulled over by a cop, she's black. And that should be enough to me. That should be enough for everybody. That's enough of an experience for everybody, right? If Kamala Harris walks into a Beverly Hills shop, somebody is going to follow her around thinking that she can't afford to be in the store. She's black. So that's black enough for me. That's not black enough for everybody, but it's black enough for me, and I think it should be black enough for everybody. I think that should be all she has to show to be a part of the experience that she is a part of. But you do get there are differences, right? There are differences between and I think a lot of white people don't understand this except for when it kind of pops up here and there. But there are not unimportant differences between the black immigrant experience and the born here African American experience. That's not nothing. That's not a. It's hard to say.
Well, there's so. I mean, let me ask you this, and if Mark Thompson happens to be listening, I hope he doesn't yell at me. He was very upset. There was a hashtag descendant of slaves that was going on with.
Oh God, these people.
Right. So I'm not trying to justify this. I'm asking to learning because it wasn't even on my radar, and Mark was talking about it. We talked about it before the show. Does it, within the black community, and I'm asking you sincerely, not knowing any answer whatsoever, does the descendants of slaves have any cachet in that it's a sense of like legitimacy or versus the black immigrant experience, or is that meaningless? I
mean, first of all, that particular hashtag is new.
Okay.
And it wasn't around, and it's been a long time since I was a kid. So I'm not trying to speak for its relevance in the black community today, and like I can't speak to any of that.
Okay.
What I can speak to is that yes, there are differences between in experience between the black immigrant experience and the African American experience. And one of those important differences is that the black immigrant experience is, by and large, an immigrant experience, which you understand, sure, which has its own like set of trials and hurdles and things to overcome, but it's fundamentally an immigrant experience. It's fundamentally, my father is from Haiti. One of the ways that makes my experience different than a lot of African American experiences is that I can always go to Haiti. I got people there, right? I got cousins and great aunts and whatever, right? Like there's something to be said about not having this racist ass country being the only place you can go,
right?
When things get bad, right?
Right.
And by the same token, that immigrant experience is, as we've seen with the Italians or with the Irish or with the Iranians now, or with Mexicans or Guatemalans or with Jamaicans or with Trinidad and Tobagans, or with Venezuelans, it is an experience that says like, okay, the first generation comes here, they get screwed up, they get put upon,
right,
and they send their kids to the best schools possible, and then by the second or third generation their kids are just like every other American and blah blah blah, and then it's by the fourth generation their kids are the ones keeping the next people, and it's a standard. I
don't think it's fourth generation, it's like it's the next generation, right?
It's a standard play. My mother is African American. She's from Mississippi. We can trace that part of our family to a man named Pittman, who was freed when Sherman's army came through Georgia. Like, that's how far back we can go. And we can't go further back than that because they didn't keep records. So my mother and that part of my experience is more of the traditional African American experience, and what you have to understand with that experience is that we've been oppressed in these lands for 400 goddamn years.
Right. No. Right? I have to go to a break, my friend. We're gonna keep talking about this, and some people have calls for you and have questions. Oh, someone disagrees with you. We'll be right back with more of Dean Obeidallah, our friend Elie Mystal, right here on the Dean Obeidallah Show. Look, it's time the media start calling out Trump's false statements for what they are: lies. Trump is a liar, and by the looks of it, he's lying every day and twice on Sundays.
The Dean Obeidallah Show. new perspectives, important voices, influential ideas. This is the Dean Obadala Show on SiriusXM Progress 127.
And welcome back, Dean Obadala Show. We're live with our friend Elie Mystal. You know him as a lawyer. You see him all the time on MSNBC doing a great job. He's also editor-in-chief of Above the Law, which I really recommend people check out. He writes some great articles there. Let's take some calls. I sent Elie all these issues to talk about on the show. And it's organic. Sorry, I'm just getting over a cold. The moment was completely done now, but it made me cough for a second. Here is, here's Jim from New York City with a question. Jim, how are you?
Hey, hi guys. Hey, by the way, Eli, I love you when you get angry on MSNBC because you cut right through the BS. You get right to the point. I love that, by the way.
Right,
thanks,
great.
Jim.
Quick things.
Go ahead.
Three quick things. Also, on the thing about the different groups of blacks, I remember Eugene Robinson had a book out a couple of years ago that tried to address some of this. The other thing I wanted to mention is I looked at the comments pages on YouTube on the Kamala Harris interview with the Breakfast Club. Some of that stuff looked like bots to me. I'm not sure.
And I think
I'm
Mark
wondering
Thompson
how
was
much
making
of
that
is-
point to me, that it is people who just want to hurt Kamala's candidacy. That's all that's about.
Yeah. And then I remembered when Obama was running in 2008, and I don't remember the poll, but I remember people telling me that, well, blacks were really behind him until he won Iowa. But then a lot of prominent blacks at the time were against him. Like I remember Andrew Young making a crack about Obama, saying that Bill Clinton had been with more black women than from Barack Obama. I remember the guy from BET basically accusing Obama of dealing drugs in Chicago and stuff in one rally. So I've seen a lot of that.
I mean,
and the third point I'm sorry.
So go ahead, Jim.
And the third point I want to make is, ethnic groups always have, and I think it's different, uniquely different for black people, but ethnic groups always have this thing about, are you really one of them? UK, for Indians, they use the term coconut. I remember a coworker here, she was Korean. I said, yeah, I'm interested in working. There's a Korean guy who's going to interview me at Goldman. So I go, yeah, well, if it's a Korean at Goldman, he's going to be a banana, okay? So you see this stuff. I didn't know what a banana was until I had to look it up. But the point is that you see this all the time,
Yeah, I mean, it happened to Obama a lot, and I think that one of the kind of not underreported, but an important point to make about Obama that he had going for him was Michelle Robinson Obama, right? Like Michelle being a black woman from Chicago and being part of that tradition, I do think helped Barack kind of cut some of this crap off at the pass. Right, because you couldn't. It was hard to say that Obama wasn't black enough when Michelle thought he was black enough, right? Because like Michelle's certainly black enough, right? Like and that helped him, and that's something that Kamala doesn't have. That's something that Cory Booker doesn't have. To cut some of this crap out of them. I've told the story, but online a couple of times. But like it was one of the things that changed for me in my personal life. Let's go back to my therapy session. Was really when I married my wife. Who my wife is biracial. Her mother is half Scottish and half Indian, but her father goes all the way back. He's Zimbabwean and goes all the way back, right? And so she's a black woman from Zimbabwe, and some of the friends that I had or frenemies that I had, who would make this charge against me that I wasn't black enough, they shut the hell up when I rolled around my African wife. Like that boom, you're like that crap. And I'm not saying that I use my wife or my, I'm not saying anything.
His wife,
like
the
that.
Calling I'm calling his wife right now. Where's Ellie's wife? So
that's not right. That's not fair. But having that certainly stopped some of this dumb crap that I received. And it's something that Kamala Harris doesn't have. It's something that Barack had, something that Kamala doesn't have to cut some of this crap. And again, it's important for me to say, as I'm saying all this, it's all crap. Like
but you're living it.
Have to.
Right, you're living it and deal with. And Jim, to your point about black leaders coming around to Obama, I'm reading Michelle Obama's book Becoming, which is a great book, and I really recently got to the point where she talked about the campaign,
right?
And finally, when the breakthrough, when they realized it was plausible, because African Americans, I think she was making the point, didn't want to just support him because just simply he was black. They want to support a winner because he was pragmatic.
Yeah.
And while they may have been impressed by him and liked him, it wasn't until they saw he was viable that was it. They're like, oh my gosh.
African American voters are extremely pragmatic. People don't think that African American voters are pragmatic because in the general, the African Americans move with such a block towards the Democrats. But even that, what the mainstream media misreads as like blacks are a captured group of the Democrats, what they don't get is that no, the reason why we move at 90% levels is because of the pragmatism. Because, and you see the same thing with Ralph Northam now in Virginia, where you tell enough black people, like, hey, do you want racist blackface man or do you want the Republican Party? People are going to like, no, I don't want no Republicans. Like those, because strategically, those people are worse for African American interests. As keeps being said through all of this, black people have no permanent friends. We have no permanent enemies. We have only permanent interests. And
can I bring it? I'm sorry.
Go ahead, Jim.
Just want to add to that a little bit. One thing, I do remember the documentary about Cory Booker when he ran for mayor.
Yeah, it was a good documentary.
Had the same issue. And also, think about all the black people that voted for George Wallace in Alabama because the alternative was far, far worse, believe it or not.
I don't even know who that was. Who could have been worse? In 62? You're saying?
They said that he was winning black votes. Because,
yeah, no, it was. I forget who.
I have to look that up. Who could have been running against?
No, Jim's absolutely right. Jim's absolutely right.
All right, Jim.
An American Experience documentary.
Thank you.
Seeing that, so.
Jim, thank you for the call. Thanks for the points, my friend. I appreciate it. I think it's interesting that you bring up the spouse point because I didn't even think about that, and that because some people online were bringing up that Senator Harris's spouse is white, and how it would have mattered the other way if he was black, that how it would change any kind of point. And I'm not making everything about me. I just do that because it makes me connect with the issue more. I'm sincere when I say this. I don't go like, and in my case, before I was in a long relationship with just a white woman who was lovely, and it didn't work out, and thank God in a way because I'm with someone much better now. So my fiance, I call her my fiance forever. We're together for years. She's not only Middle Eastern, she's an immigrant. I mean, she's a Palestinian immigrant from Palestine. So, and I joke I got her on eBay, folks. I'll be here all weekend. But she, she is from the Middle East now. So if there were any questions about my own credibility in my community that I was not aware of at the time, because they really knew me as a comedian who was using comedy to be an activist, but there was a time I was just a comedian, that probably had an impact to help a little bit, because I would talk about my fiance and say, she's from the Middle East and everything we talk about, like, oh my, and they were like, mashallah, God bless you, God bless it, like how great that is and all that stuff. So little things that I didn't even think of till you just said it in a way, like I never even occurred to me.
There are all these ways that people of color have to prove their bona fides to other people of color. To bring it back to my wife. So in my neighborhood, she gave me some credibility, I think. But then in our world, to give her credibility with other black people that we would meet going forward, like I had to teach her how to play spades. She's from Zimbabwe. She didn't know how to play spades. I had to teach her how to play spades. She has to be we cannot, if we're going to go to certain places.
Excuse my ignorance, spades is a game that I know the game, but is it a game that's very popular in the African American community? I didn't know this.
It's a very popular card game in the African American community. Actually, I usually play Bid Whist, which is even more, is less popular, but kind of black people bridge, sometimes people call it.
Black people bridge. I never heard this. I'm learning all the time.
But yeah, that's you go to the cookout, somebody pulls out cards, you know what they're playing, and if she can't play, that's like strike one, right? So I had to teach her how to do that. There are all these, it's some of it is performative, and so much of it is crap. But the only thing that I'll latch onto here as not completely horrible is that, again, when you talk about a community that is under so much pressure and always fighting, always having to fight for just the right to be heard, the right to be seen as an equal, the right to not be shot while you're walking home with a bag of Skittles. When you talk about a community that's under this kind of stress, I'm gonna allow a little bit for the aspect where the community tries to have these things that are just for them, right? That are known just for them, that are respected and appreciated and loved within the community, and have some expectation or hope or desire that other people within the community will adopt those traditions as well. I'm like, I'm gonna have some time for that, just because of the stress that the community is always under, right?
I find this very enlightening, and I'm learning a lot about. And again, it's funny. Like, I am not afraid to say I don't know things, and if people get upset that how do you not know this, I'm confident enough as a human being, as I've gotten older, to say I don't know things. I don't know about every community. I don't know the nuance of every community.
And can I just say, that goes to authenticity, and that's the word I haven't used yet. That's an important word, and I'm embarrassed that I haven't used it yet there. That's what people are trying to figure out. Like, what are you being your authentic self? Right. So to go back to I was smoking joints and listening to Snoop Dogg, right? The problem is that she doesn't sound authentic when she says that, not only because it's factually wrong, but it doesn't read with how she is. Whereas again, and it took me a while before I got this confidence, when I could be my authentic self and say, yes, I am pro-black, I am anti-racist, I am a social justice warrior, and I can sing every lyric to every song on Pearl Jam's 10, what's up? Like, once I got to that level of confidence, that allowed me to start behaving as my authentic self. And that's the difference. That's, we can talk about wives and spades and all this kind of stuff. It's when I was able to fully live as my authentic self that I think that I started getting more respect for my authentic self. What we need from Kamala and Booker is for them to show that they are being their authentic selves, whoever that self might be. And maybe Kamala's authentic self is not smoking joints and listening to rap music. Maybe that's not her. She needs to show what is her.
So with Booker, I've got to take a break, but I didn't realize there was an issue with Booker. The only reason I knew about the Kamala Harris issue is because Politico had a headline today about how happy she was. They asked her about it.
You should listen to Breakfast Club sometimes.
And she's doing and either it was really good spin or she seemed in her comments not to be defensive at all. Like, I'm glad you asked. Let's talk about this. With Senator Booker, I'm from Jersey. I mean, I've met Booker probably 9 or 10 times or 15 times. He's been on the show a couple of times. It's hard to get him on. We have a lot of mutual friends who helped him, who worked on his campaigns, who know him really well. I didn't realize within the black community there was an issue. What you're hinting at was authenticity with him or legitimacy with him, because he seems so comfortable in his skin from what we've seen. I don't know, but you hear different things. So let's take a break. I've got to take a break. We'll come right back. Then you're going to talk about Cory Booker to us because, I watched him on Rachel Madsen last night. I'm like, you killed it. I'm like, he was killing it. I'll be right back after this.
The Dean Obeidallah Show.
Whoever's the next president, we should call him the 45th president of the United States. And this will go down as a dark time in America that we'll never refer to again.
SiriusXM Progress. And now, more of the Dean Obeidallah Show on Sirius XM's Progress.
And welcome back to the Dean Obeidallah Show. In studio, our friend Elie Mystal. Hey, there's our friend Joe Kennedy on MSNBC right now. I like Joe a lot. We interviewed him last week again. So, Elie, we were talking about Cory Booker. I had no idea. I don't know where I live. You know, how am I oblivious to things that I need it to be written in Politico or Washington Post or the political email in the morning. So where's Cory Booker's legitimacy issue?
The best way of putting it is this: when Cory Booker tries to code switch, it always goes bad. And
code switch is
I get
the context, but
right. So you might try to sound a little bit more cool. Might try to sound a little bit more hip or more street. In certain ways, I code switch a lot when it put like this. There's no version of events where I use the word "ain't" accidentally, right?
Okay.
Like I'm trying to make a point when I say "ain't," right? Like my natural speaking is "isn't."
Right.
So however you speak at home, then when you speak in public, which word are you using, right? So there's some people who say "ain't" at home and "isn't" on the radio. I'm a guy who says "isn't" at home and "ain't" on the radio, depending on what point I'm trying to get across, right? So that's kind of a very basic code switch, right? Barack Obama, when he would code switch, did it like a giant god. I mean, it was amazing. He started singing Al Green, and he started Obama could code switch for real. Booker, not so much. Not so much. It's not his best self. Mm-hmm. So whenever he tries to, it's really just like it reads poorly when he tries to do that. So I think that's something that people pick up on, people kind of notice. And again, I think it's largely crap. I don't think that this is important. I think that we should focus on, I struggle to think of if criminal justice reform is your most important issue, as it pretty much is for me, because I have 2 black children that I need to not get shot.
Sure.
Right?
Sure.
Cory Booker has been the most out front on criminal justice reform for his entire career. More out front than Kamala, more out front than Bernie. He has been, he talked about legalizing marijuana when it wasn't cool. I would focus on his record on criminal justice reform as opposed to whether or not he can drop his A's at the right time. But other people will, and part of it is because other people do not have the benefit of knowing his full record on the criminal justice reform. I've been able to watch him on the Senate Judiciary Committee for the past 2 years, talking about judicial issues and criminal issues, and getting a sense of what he believes about those issues. Not everybody is tuning into C-SPAN to see that, and so they're trying to pick up, is he authentically going to help something that I care about with these codes that are incorrect, but that's where he has some pushback.
But do you think, though, we're going to have a Democratic primary with numerous candidates, this issue, even subtly or subconsciously for certain people in the black community, if they're torn between, it comes down to really in their mind, Kamala versus Booker.
See, no. See, what I think, though, this is the pre-primary. This is the early days. None of this is going to matter by the time we get to Iowa, I don't think.
Right.
What I would like to see, and this has happened as well, like, at some point, some of these white candidates are also going to need black votes. And how do they
definitely going to need the primary? Are you kidding me?
Right?
South Carolina's the first primary, and it's a year from now in February.
How are some of these white candidates going to appeal to African American voters, and what kind of stupid code switching issues are they going to have? I mean, I think you saw on the internet this week, Kirsten Gillibrand was out having chicken and waffles with a fork. And
people said that was...
And people were dogging her for it, right? And again, I like to focus on her, strong commitment against domestic violence and her commitment to abolish ICE. I think that's more important than how she eats some fried chicken. But if you have not had the opportunity to read all of her platform positions and whatever, you might kind of look at this as an indication of Kirsten Gillibrand being inauthentic in her attempts to eat chicken and waffles.
I guess the fine line is if you want someone from outside of the community to show a community, whatever community that might be, if it's the Muslim community, if it's the African American community, Jewish community, that you're making an effort. Like, what's the effort you can make, even if it's slightly awkward and cumbersome? They go, well, they kind of screwed up, but look, they tried, and other candidates didn't. I don't know. I mean, I'm not saying eating chicken and waffles is the answer. It's probably something more substantive. But, to get to, and we have to go to a break, when you think about how important the African American vote is for Democrats, especially African American women, were 92, 94%. And the first two primaries or caucuses, or Iowa and New Hampshire, are ridiculous. The Democrats on their own should make a choice. They should move South Carolina to being the first one where 30% of the community of the state is African American. That is more representative and I think respectful of the black community that has given so much to this party. Because without the black vote, this party goes nowhere. I mean, and people have to realize how important that is. So let's take a break and come right back.
Dean Obadala Show on Sirius XM Progress 127. The Dean Obadala Show on Sirius XM Progress 127.
And welcome back, Dean Obadala Show. We got about 2 minutes left. We have 2 minutes. Do you want to touch on the Amman case for just like 2 minutes?
Yeah,
here?
okay, so
'cause you wrote about it.
Yeah, this happens to be the worst Supreme Court decision, at least in the past couple of years, at least since the Muslim ban. So there's a death penalty case. The guy asks for a spiritual advisor, as many people who've watched television know that your last rites, you get your priest and whatever. Only this guy was Muslim, so he didn't ask for a priest. He asked for an imam. And the state of Alabama said, no, you can't have one for security reasons. Again, it's a death penalty. They're going to kill him. And they don't give him the imam for security reasons. It gets appealed on an advanced appeal all the way up to Supreme Court. And 5-4, all the conservative justices, all these Christian conservative justices that spend all their time trying to stop women's rights in the name of Jesus and trying to stop birth control in the name of Jesus. All these people did not let this man have a spiritual advisor. They sided with Alabama. They killed him alone. It's the worst decision that's happened since the Muslim ban, and it shouldn't stand.
The same people who gave you the Muslim ban give you this thing, and both cases not based in reality of the real world, what goes on here, because they don't care. I mean, this is the... What can you...
Security
we have like 20 seconds. My friend, so where are you on Twitter again so people can follow you?
At LENYC.
Elie NYC, folks, check him out, or abovethelaw.com or
Abovethelaw.com.
Abovethelaw.com. Elie writes there. He's the editor-in-chief. It's a great publication. You can always see him on MSNBC. Thanks so much for coming in studio. I really appreciate it.
Thanks a lot,
I
team.
learned a lot. I really, sincerely did. Thank you very much. We're going to come back. Daniel Moody Mills will be on with us for the next hour right here on the Dean Obeidallah Show.